Grandma, it's hot in here, let me out of the room. No way. I'm gonna go shopping now. You're gonna stay here and watch the house. As the daughter attempted to leave the room with her mother-in-law, she was gently shoved back in. The 5-year-old daughter, who usually attends kindergarten, has to rely on her in-laws on Sundays when work comes up unexpectedly. Thus, the daughter was left in the care of her grandmother-in-law, who, though she took her in, didn't seem inclined to look after her. The room into which the grandmother-in-law pushed the girl was originally used by her husband. Now it's more like a storage room, with nothing suitable for a child to play with. Additionally, it's on the second floor with a large window, making it feel stuffy even with the window open due to the heat. Today, a heat stroke warning was issued, and the sealed room had surpassed 95 degrees Fahrenheit. In such conditions, the grandmother-in-law cheerfully grabs the air conditioner remote. Time to save some energy, she declares without hesitation and presses the button to turn off the air conditioner. She then slams the door shut and blocks it with a pile of magazines so the girl can't leave the room. My name is Alice, I'm 32 years old. I live in an apartment not far from my in-laws' place with my husband, David, who's 3 years older than me, and our 5-year-old daughter, Summer. My father-in-law passed away less than a year after Summer was born. Currently, my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, April, live together in the in-laws' house. April, in her 20s, lived on her own, but returned home after the death of our father-in-law to take care of her mother. Being close in age, April and I get along like real sisters. Though I have a good relationship with April, and we meet regularly, I can't say the same for my mother-in-law, who is the head of the household. She dotes on her son and daughter, and seems jealous that I stole her son by marrying him. When I was pregnant, her demeanor changed drastically upon learning the baby was a girl. Why is it a girl? I was ready to spoil a boy rotten, but a girl? What a letdown! She exclaimed loud enough for the unborn baby to hear. I was too shocked to respond. At that time, David scolded her, saying, "Mom, why say such things when we're welcoming a new family member? It's your first grandchild, gender doesn't matter." But his mother just sulked without showing any remorse. Later, April came to apologize, saying, "Alice, I heard Mom said some terrible things. I'm really sorry." Because of such incidents, my mother-in-law treats not only me but also little Summer as a nuisance. David and April try to correct her behavior, but it's been to no avail. As both David and I work, we sometimes have to leave Summer at the in-laws. But watching my mother-in-law's daily attitude, I just can't fully trust her. She doesn't think highly of Summer, and before I married David, I heard from him that she once almost let her dog die by leaving it in a room with the air conditioning turned off during the peak of summer. Back then, my father-in-law was still alive, and he immediately noticed and took the dog to the vet, saving its life before it later passed from old age. Despite being severely scolded by my father-in-law at the time, my mother-in-law didn't seem to be truly remorseful, which is why I can't help but worry that she might inadvertently do something again. Right now, it's the height of summer. The heat is so intense that even adults are struggling, so naturally, a 5-year-old like Summer needs air conditioning in this scorching weather. That's why every time I leave her at my in-laws during the summer, I make sure to remind them to keep the air conditioning on. Despite the risk of heat stroke, every time I mention it, my mother-in-law sighs in exasperation and says things like, "Goodness, what a waste of electricity." Each time, I'm left feeling cramped and uncomfortable. It's April, my sister-in-law, who comes to my defense against such snide remarks from my mother-in-law. "Don't say that to Alice, Mom. The AC isn't a waste in the summer, right? If we're all in the same room, one is enough. Besides, you leave the electricity on for things you're not even using," she says. "Oh, really?" my mother-in-law responds. "Yes. Just yesterday, you left the TV on without watching it. And after your bath, you left all the lights on in the bathroom and the changing room. If you're gonna preach about saving electricity, you should start with yourself," April points out. I'm aware of my mother-in-law's bad habits, but it seems unlikely they'll ever change. Ignoring her grumbling, I'm grateful to April for gladly looking after Summer. April works a job with little overtime and always steps up to care for Summer. Summer has been attending daycare since she was 3 and isn't frequently left with my in-laws. I try not to rely on them because of my mother-in-law's attitude, but depending on the time of year, David and I often work late, and sometimes we get called into work unexpectedly on weekends. When that happens, and daycare isn't open on Sunday, we have no choice but to ask my in-laws for help. One late July Sunday, both David and I had work commitments and had to go to our respective jobs. David knows my mother-in-law doesn't think kindly of me or Summer and is always considerate. But on this day, we had no choice but to have my mother-in-law look after Summer. "Be good at Grandma's house, okay?" I said to Summer, patting her head after waving David off. "Okay, I understand." She nodded meekly but wouldn't look up at my mother-in-law. She's always been an easy child, but seeing her go into the house, obediently following my words, I couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. I could tell that even at her young age, Summer felt disliked by my mother-in-law, which made me feel sorry for her. "I'm sorry. I'll try to finish work as early as possible and come to pick up Summer. And there's a heat advisory today, so please take care of yourself. Turn on the AC early and stay hydrated. And make sure you drink your tea, Summer," I said. Recently, the temperatures have been exceeding 86 degrees Fahrenheit, but today it was especially hot. With this heat, my mother-in-law should not hesitate to use the AC, but when I stressed it, she clearly showed her annoyance. "I know that. Geez, having to look after that child in this heat. I wish you'd consider my situation a bit," she complained blatantly. "Sorry." I apologized and bowed my head, determined to finish my tasks quickly and pick up Summer as soon as possible before leaving my in-laws' house. But later, I would regret not being more alert to my mother-in-law's attitude. 3 hours after leaving Summer, I finished work and was heading to my in-laws when I received a call on my cell phone. It was from Summer. Before leaving her with my in-laws, I had given her a child's cell phone, just in case. "Hello, Summer?" I answered with a sense of foreboding. "Mommy," came her frail, frightened voice. "Hey, when are you gonna come get me?" "I'm on my way now. I'll be there soon, just wait for me," I reassure her as I walk down the sidewalk. Then, with a voice that seems rushed, Summer says, "Please, come quick. Something feels off." When I ask her what's wrong, she falls silent. As I begin to sweat despite the heat, worried that my mother-in-law might have done something to Summer, she pleads with a tearful voice, "Mommy, help." Realizing this is no small matter, I rush to my in-laws' house without waiting for further details from Summer. Upon arrival, my mother-in-law is nowhere to be seen. Possibly out shopping. But Summer's shoes are at the entrance, she must be inside. She's not on the first floor, so I go upstairs and see a pile of magazines blocking a door. It's the room David used to use when he lived at home. With a bad feeling, I quickly remove the magazines and open the door. Only to be faced with a shocking situation. Some time later, my mother-in-law returned home in high spirits. It was 3 hours after I had left Summer at their house. However, seeing an ambulance parked in front of the house and someone being carried into it, her expression instantly changed. "What the heck is going on here?" she screamed, running over to us with a look of horror. David had just arrived, so all 3 of us, including Summer, were there. Then my mother-in-law shoved us aside and screamed towards the ambulance. "April! Oh, why, what happened?" Yes, it was April who had just been rushed into the ambulance. Limp and unresponsive to her mother's cries. "Why is it not Summer but April who is in this state?" My mother-in-law, failing to understand, glared at Summer clinging to me. I felt a surge of anger at her attitude, but David stepped forward before I could respond. "So it was your doing, Mom." "Eh? What are you talking about?" She feigned ignorance, looking away. "Don't play dumb. We know you turned off the AC and locked Summer in the room," I pressed. Caught, my mother-in-law seemed to realize her mistake and began to stutter. I had just heard from Summer that my mother-in-law had intentionally locked her in the upstairs room and turned off the AC. The upstairs room gets much hotter than downstairs, reaching over 95 degrees when sealed. She must have known what could happen to a 5-year-old in such conditions. Her actions were beyond mere harassment, and I was horrified. Despite Summer's pleas not to stay in the hot room, my mother-in-law left her there and went out shopping. Fortunately, Summer was safe. It turned out that my mother-in-law thought she had turned off the AC in Summer's room, but she had actually turned off the one in the next room. She probably mixed up the remotes, which she is careless with and never puts back in place. There were times when the living room TV remote turned up in her room or the AC remote from her car. She used the remotes for adjacent rooms interchangeably without returning them, which likely led to this confusion. That next room belonged to April. April, who had been sleeping, was subjected to a room like a steam bath after the AC was turned off and suffered heatstroke. When the paramedics asked if someone could accompany April, my mother-in-law was the first to raise her hand. But David strongly objected. "Whose fault do you think this is?" he shouted at her. David took advantage of her momentary shock and boarded the ambulance. My mother-in-law, watching him, began to cry out, "April, hold on! Oh, if only Summer had been the one to get heatstroke instead." Unable to tolerate my mother-in-law's selfish remarks, my anger reached its peak. Before I could rebuke her, one of the paramedics scolded her, "Enough is enough. Don't you realize what happens when you turn off the AC in this blazing heat? You need to take a deep look at the seriousness of this life-threatening situation. Reflect on what you've done," he admonished. "What do you mean, don't interfere in someone else's family affairs? I never meant to kill anyone, I properly left the remote in her room." My mother-in-law retorted defiantly to the paramedic's scolding, leaving me speechless. I realized that nothing I said would make a difference to this woman, and at the same time, I knew I could never forgive my unrepentant mother-in-law. After watching the ambulance with April and David leave, I decided to take Summer back to my parents' house. My mother-in-law, unable to join them in the ambulance, apparently went to the hospital on her own later. Fortunately, April was not in danger for her life and was able to return home in good health the next day after receiving N4. Relieved that there were no lasting effects. I was just about to exhale when my mother-in-law summoned Summer and me back to her house. David also seemed to have his grievances with his mother, so the three of us went to the in-laws' house together. After such an uproar, I didn't want to bring Summer, but I couldn't leave a 5-year-old alone at home. No matter what my mother-in-law might say, I intended to protect Summer with all my might. As soon as we arrived, my mother-in-law yelled at me and ordered me to kneel and apologize to April. "If you hadn't left Summer here, none of this would have happened. It's your responsibility, so apologize to April right now," she demanded unreasonably. Astonished by her blatant blame-shifting, I calmly advised her, "Please don't yell. Summer is scared." But with her face red with anger, my mother-in-law yelled, "Shut up. I can't stand the sight of such a child." If she had died from heatstroke, maybe a boy would have been born next, hurling these cruel words at Summer. "How could you say such a thing?" I couldn't help but shout back at her while holding Summer tight. Caught off guard by my response, my mother-in-law faltered for a moment. But then she glared at us with a scowl. "Don't talk back to me, a daughter-in-law should know her place. Apologize right now." That's when April said, "What are you saying? Stop it already," stepping in front of me to shield me from our mother-in-law. "It's because Summer called Alice for help that I didn't end up worse. If Alice hadn't come and called the ambulance, I would have been in much more serious condition," April said, furiously glaring at our mother-in-law. I had never seen April so angry. Our mother-in-law seemed shocked too, being yelled at by her usually doting daughter. When Summer called me for help, saying she was locked in a room, I rushed over immediately. But after listening to Summer, there were some puzzling points. She mentioned that our mother-in-law pressed something on a remote in front of her, and Summer heard a loud noise from the next room. It was assumed that the remote was used to turn off the AC, but that didn't explain how Summer was comfortably cool in her room. Then, after hearing about the noise from the next room, I had a hunch. Could our mother-in-law have mistakenly turned off the AC in April's room next door? April had said she was off today. Could that noise have been April calling for help? With that thought, even though I felt it might just be my imagination, I instructed Summer. "Summer, press the blue button on the remote." When I arrived at the in-laws' house, I found Summer locked in the room and quickly got her out. In the next room, April was on the floor, her body incredibly hot. While waiting for the ambulance, I gave her water and listened to her story. April said she hadn't been sleeping well due to work lately. She had fallen into a deep sleep because it was her day off on Sunday, but woke up feeling unbearably hot and realized she was suffering from heat stroke. She tried to call for help with her smartphone, which was charging far from her bed, but couldn't move well due to nausea and dizziness. The AC remote, which should have been in her room, was nowhere to be found. She managed to move but collapsed after falling from the bed. The noise Summer heard was the sound of April falling from the bed. Fortunately, because I had Summer press the AC button and some time had passed, the room temperature had started to settle. However, being locked in a room that reached 95 degrees for a while, April's heatstroke had become severe. What if Summer had missed that sound? What if she thought it was just her imagination and hadn't told me? I might not have realized April was there, and in the worst case, she might have died. The thought was chilling. "Even I almost died, and you locked such a small child in that room. Don't you understand you should never do such a thing, no matter who it is? The one who should apologize is you, Mother, for trying to kill your granddaughter. Consider it grace that you're not being sued for attempted murder." April scolded with tears in her eyes, but our mother-in-law remained silent. After a while, she kept repeating because. Showing no intention to apologize, April gave her a cold look. "It's no use talking to you anymore. I'm at my limit. After Dad died, I stayed because I was worried about you, but I can't forgive you for this, and I can't live in fear anymore. I'll be moving out soon," April declared, which finally changed our mother-in-law's expression. "What are you saying? Haven't I always cared for you and David? You two are my precious family," my mother-in-law protested, her face turning pale. "Who nearly killed that precious family member?" April snapped back at her, but the mother-in-law began to have a hysterical fit, banging on the table. David then said to our mother-in-law, "Family isn't just us. Or are you saying Alice and Summer aren't part of our family?" his voice shaking with anger. To David's question, our mother-in-law snorted defiantly and looked at me with a mocking smile. "They're not family, obviously. That daughter-in-law and granddaughter, they're not connected to me by blood," she said, making it clear that to her, Summer and I were never family from the start, but strangely, I wasn't as shocked as I might have been. After all, Summer is her granddaughter, there is a blood connection. But even so, I didn't feel the need to correct her. April seemed to feel the same way, sighing deeply and staring at our mother-in-law with an expressionless face. "It seems useless to say anything more. I'll be packing up and leaving soon, you'll have to take care of everything yourself after that," April said decisively. This sent our mother-in-law into a frenzy, and she clung to April's arm, wailing and crying. "No, don't decide on your own. You're going to live here with me forever. It's you who shouldn't make decisions on your own. How about growing up and letting go of your children? I'm taking this opportunity to cut ties with you. Don't contact me ever again." April's resolve was firm, and she shook off our mother-in-law's grip, showing her rejection. "Oh, no! April!" Seemingly overwhelmed by the shock, our mother-in-law screamed and then, carried away by her emotions, she ran out of the house. I later found out that our mother-in-law had been going around the neighborhood acting as if she was the victim, spreading rumors that it was all my fault. The next day, while out with my family, I received a call from my mother-in-law. As soon as I answered, she began to shout so loudly it hurt my ears, and I immediately wanted to end the call. Before I could ask why she was calling, she started ranting about something that had happened today. Apparently, the breaker at her house had been tripped without her realizing it, and all the food in her fridge had gone bad. It seems that everything in the freezer had melted into a huge mess. Additionally, my mother-in-law was enraged because a TV drama she had been looking forward to recording was not taped, and she was convinced that I was the only one who could be responsible. "You did this, didn't you? How far will you go with your harassment?" "No, I don't know anything about that. The TV was on normally when we left, wasn't it? We haven't been back since then, so it's impossible for us to have done it," I replied, but my mother-in-law kept accusing me. "You and Summer are such a nuisance. Just divorce David already and go somewhere far away, the both of you." My mother-in-law had lost all composure and was now demanding a divorce. As if it wasn't enough that she was bad-mouthing me, what had Summer ever done to her? She had conjured up this whole idea that David had been stolen from her, was jealous for no reason, and now she was demanding a divorce. I wanted to scream back at her, but there were a lot of people around. I didn't want to cause a scene in front of my family or others, so I took a deep breath to calm down. I deeply care about David, and I intend to continue living with him and Summer as a family of 3. Please don't talk nonsense about us getting a divorce, I stated clearly. And though you are David's mother, I have no desire to associate with someone who intentionally causes pain to others, I added, asking her not to be involved with us anymore. Still, my mother-in-law continued to scream irrational things, and I was about to hang up when my phone was taken by a hand reaching from the side. It was April who had taken my phone and started talking to our mother-in-law. "Hello, Mom?" "Yes, it's April. Actually, it was me who turned off the breaker. It must have saved on the electricity bill for the night, right?" April explained with a smile. "What, April, why?" My mother-in-law's voice was loud enough to be heard without putting the phone to my ear. She was confused about why April was with me and why she would do something like turning off the house's breaker. "Mom, I've told you many times about not leaving the electricity on when you're not using it, haven't I? You always demand others to save but leave it on yourself. Even when I left, the TV and all the lights were on. Didn't I ask you if I should turn everything off because it's wasteful? You said it was okay. So, I turned it off. It saved electricity, so it's all good, right?" April said, her face bright with relief. "What do you mean, it's not okay? I have to replace all the food now. It's irreplaceable. April, come back home right now." "It's fine. You can just buy it again, right? Maybe next time you'll get better ingredients." "Mom, you always said saving electricity was more important than human lives, so I was just helping out. Anyway, I don't care anymore, so goodbye. I won't contact you again, but take care." April continued, ignoring our mother-in-law's cries, and ended the call. "Sorry for talking so long." She apologized as she handed back my phone, and I shook my head. "No, I feel much better now," I replied. "It's almost time to board, isn't it? Take care over there. It's still hot these days, so watch your health," I told her as April nodded with a smile. April was moving far away today. Right now, I'm at the airport seeing her off with my family of 3. April had decided long ago to leave the overprotective care of our mother-in-law. The place she chose to move to is far from my mother-in-law's reach. April's face was bright as she embarked on her journey to her new world, and we waved her off with smiles. Since then, we've been keeping in touch with April, updating each other on our lives. She seems to be enjoying life in her new world, living each day with vigor. Shortly after April's departure, we also moved and started a new life in our new home. We didn't give our mother-in-law our new address and blocked her number, cutting off all ties, which has made our life considerably more comfortable. David had also been quite distressed by his mother's smothering love, but being her son, he had never been able to push her away until now. After the recent uproar, he decided it was time to make a clean break. My mother-in-law has become isolated from the community because she deliberately put Summer's life in danger and tried to deceive the neighbors with lies and slander about me. We moved without her knowledge, And since April also left home, my mother-in-law has no one to rely on. She seems to be living a lonely and depressed life, subsisting on my father-in-law's inheritance without any financial power. Whatever path she chooses to walk from here on out is beyond our knowledge. Oh, by the way, April mentioned she wants to come visit soon, I remembered. Just the other day, during a phone call, April invited us to her place, saying that she had settled into her new home and wanted us to visit. Let's use the long weekend next month to go see her. David agreed enthusiastically, and Summer, thrilled at the idea, exclaimed, I want to go. I want to ride on a plane. We're all looking forward to it. When we meet, I plan to tell her that she's going to have a new nephew. From now on, I want us to live a happy life as a family of 4, watching over Summer's growth and welcoming the new baby boy into our lives.